The call came while I was folding a towel. That detail matters to me because it tells you how unprepared I was for the rest of the day. I remember the texture of the fabric, the way my hands were already doing something useful. When the voice on the other end said my son's name, I sat down on the edge of the tub, as if someone had quietly removed the floor. They said accident. They always do. It's a word that creates space. A legal clearing where everyone can stand without touching anything sharp. My father-in-law's construction site. Late afternoon. A fall. I listened. I thanked them. I asked where to go. At the hospital, a nurse tried to guide me away from the room. There are protocols for fathers who look composed. We are assumed to be brittle in a different way. I told her I needed to see him. She stepped aside. I don't talk about my work anymore. When I did, people leaned in as if it explained me. 15 years in rooms where truth had to be coaxed without leaving marks that would speak later. 15 years learning how bodies respond when words don't match what happened to them. I retired because the work stays with you even when you do everything by the book. I knew, when I looked at my son, that the book had been ignored. Bruises that didn't belong to a fall. Defensive wounds that told a short, ugly story. I cataloged them the way I'd been trained to, distance first, then detail, because cataloging kept me upright. A doctor said something about resuscitation attempts. I nodded. I asked for photographs. I asked for the timestamps. At home, the house sounded wrong without him. His shoes by the door. The half-built model on the table. My wife moved through rooms as if they were suddenly too narrow. Her father arrived with his practiced sorrow. A man who had learned long ago how to look appropriate in bad light. He put a hand on my shoulder. I let it rest there long enough to feel the calculation underneath. He talked about insurance, about investigators, about how terrible accidents were in our line of work. His line of work. That night, alone, the thought came to me fully formed. I don't need evidence. I need 30 minutes. It surprised me how calm it felt, like a solution rather than an impulse. Experience can do that, make terrible ideas feel professional. I did not act on it. That matters too. Instead, I slept in the chair by my son's bed because it felt wrong to leave him. I watched the morning find the walls. I practiced breathing in counts that used to steady other men. I reminded myself of the things my training actually taught me, not the myths people attach to it. Interrogation is not violence. It is patience. It is listening for what cracks when pressure is applied correctly, by institutions, by time. The police called. I answered. I gave them what I had without editorializing. I said nothing about my suspicions and everything about the injuries. I used the words that move cases forward, not the ones that feel satisfying to say. My father-in-law called his lawyer. I could tell because the tone of his messages changed. They became shorter, safer. He asked if we were doing okay. I didn't respond. In the weeks that followed, I learned how much of grief is logistics. Forms. Meetings. The way sympathy curdles into impatience when you don't recover on schedule. I also learned how slowly institutions move until they don't. An adjuster found discrepancies. A subcontractor mentioned a ledger. Someone else remembered a conversation they'd written off as bravado. None of it would have mattered without time, without restraint, without letting the system feel the weight of its own inertia. There were nights I sat in the dark and imagined those 30 minutes. Not with specifics, fantasy is lazier than that, but with the idea of certainty, of being done. Each time I asked myself who that would serve. It would not serve my son. It would not serve my wife. It would serve a story where grief becomes permission. I attended the hearing with my hands folded. My father-in-law did not look at me. When the ruling shifted from accident to investigation, something in his posture collapsed that had nothing to do with age. Afterward, he asked to speak with me privately. In the hallway, fluorescent lights humming, he said my name like it still belonged to him. I know you, he said. I know what you can do. I told him the truth. You don't. That was the last time we spoke alone. Months later, the case moved forward. Charges that sounded too small for the shape of my loss. Fraud, negligence, obstruction. The words did not include my son's name often enough to satisfy anyone. Justice rarely does. On the day the plea was entered, I stood outside the building and felt nothing I could identify cleanly. Relief was too generous a word. Revenge didn't apply. What I felt was alignment, the sense that, for once, my hands were not at odds with my values. People still say things to me. They say what they would have done. They say I must have wanted blood. They want the myth because it lets them imagine a world where pain converts neatly into power. I correct them when I can. Quietly, I tell them what actually happened. That I stayed. That I waited. That I chose the slow, unsatisfying work of letting truth surface without my fingerprints on it. At home, we keep my son's model on the shelf. We finished it together, my wife and I, weeks after the trial concluded. We didn't talk much while we worked. We didn't need to. Sometimes, late, I still feel the old training stir, the urge to solve by force of will. I acknowledge it and let it pass. Restraint is not weakness. It is a skill, one I am still practicing. If there is an honor in this, it is not in what I could have done. It is in what I refused to become.